Mason County Sheriff Casey Salisbury and Jail Chief Kevin Hansen. Good morning, folks. How you guys doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. Good.
To see you here. And what are we talking about today? First things first, you still got your beards. They're looking great. We're past November, though. So what's going on, and how's the fundraising efforts?
Well, they're looking great, depending on who you're asking. And
Sure.
the fundraiser, we continued, as you know, from No Shave November into December for our staff, for those that were willing to put some money into sponsoring Special Olympics to get us kind of our kickoff, early kickoff for money for Special Olympics. And so we have a number of people in the office still holding true on the beards.
Well, it's sometimes it's tough to let those full. I mean, they look great on you guys. They're coming in good. You're going to keep it, Kevin?
No.
No, not so much. Counting down the days. Very nice. We are talking jail today here, and this is an often talked about subject here in the county. And one of the main bones of contention that different folks have is just how many folks are able to stay in the jail, how many beds there are, what is the official number, and what is the legal kind of number. And a lot of people are coming up with different counts. So first things first, if you look at a purchase order from whenever the jail was made, how many beds are in the jail?
You got 74 male beds and 20 female beds.
74 male, 20 female. Okay.
That's 94.
So 94 all told. Now, I have spent a lot of time Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday nights watching Lockup on MSNBC. I watch these shows. I know what's going on. I know that there are times when folks don't play nice with each other. And this is where some of the numbers are, people are wondering where we have folks available for beds and things like that. Is that kind of the case?
Yeah, it is actually. You know, we have our system broken down by risk, and there's basically three classifications of prisoners. We got involuntary protective custody, voluntary protective custody. We have administrative segregation, which is like a disciplinary area, and then we have general population for both male and female. So, you know, I kind of liken it to this. You know, you go to the kennel, the dog kennel.
Sure.
And you have a whole bunch of dogs in there, and you got big mean dogs that may be violent, and then you have the Yorkies. You're not going to put the Yorkies in with the pit bulls, right? So we have to keep them separate, and the sheriff is obligated by statute and by case law actually to make sure that we run a jail that is constitutional, that protects the inmates and it protects our staff. And you know, when we stack people in that jail like cordwood, more than the 94 beds, and they're sleeping on floors and they're stepping over each other, you know, there's case law that says that violates the United States Constitution.
So when we talk about folks on the floors, they are in, we've talked about in the past, they're boats. They're basically sleeping, just a kind of like a sleeping area. They're not on the concrete, but it's not an official bed.
Yeah, that's correct. They're on the floor. They're in a plastic tub, I guess. You put the mattress in a tub, and they're sleeping on the floor, and they're sleeping in the common areas, you know, where people eat and where the bathroom is and where the shower is, and oftentimes, you know, the splash from the shower gets on these guys' beds, and you just can't do that. You have to provide sanitary living conditions, and that's part of the United States constitutional mandates. And, you know, having people walk over people going to the bathroom and everything else, that's not constitutional.
And I think we've talked in the past, too, of how times when officers will need to go in, they'll do the counts, the head counts and things like that, and may need to traverse over some of these folks, stepping over them in certain situations, and that's quite a safety concern.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. You know, you don't want to be stepping over an inmate. You know, that's just unsafe. I mean, that's pretty much common sense.
So where does the controversy come with the bed counts?
So there's a concept out among some people in the community that we have 50 more beds than we really do. There's the number 144, and oftentimes even more than 144 is being thrown out there, and what they're claiming and alleging is that those 50 extra beds are beds because they're holding cells, they're floor space, they're counting that as the bed count. And you just can't count temporary housing and people on the floor as beds. You know, we have inmates living in the holding cell. And as a matter of fact, in the month of November, we have 5 holding cells, and we average 3.7 inmates living in holding cells. And that's because they had to keep separate. We had to separate them from the general population because it could be mental illness, it could be a medical condition, it could be because somebody just doesn't get along with somebody else. I have no place else to put them. And you know, you can't constitutionally just lock somebody into a 8x8 cement room and close the door and say, "I'll see you when you get out." You just can't do that.
What's in the holding cells now? Is there benches, or is there a place where someone could claim that they would lie down and maybe that's a bed, or or is it just a room with nothing in it?
No, there's a room, and there's a bed in there, and a toilet and a sink.
Okay. But it's not enough for the 3.7 average.
Correct. And those holding cells, you know, we got to keep those open for the intakes that come into the jail. I mean, that's the first place they stop is in booking, and that's where the holding cells are. And you know, we have to have a place to keep those people safe while we're waiting the booking process. You know, and if you fill them up with general population people, you can't maintain the safety of the facility.
Jeff, I think one of the things that, from the line officer side of you, when you're the person out working the road, is that when you bring an individual into the jail and you go into what's called the Sally Port, the garage, you take the person out there and you pat them down and make sure again that they're second pat door before they go in the institution. You go inside, you've got to have a place to put that person or hold that person while you're filling out the paperwork. Mm-hmm. You can't just let somebody go and move free to move about throughout the jail while you're filling out your paperwork and your booking sheets and going through the process of getting that ready. Or if the corrections officer already has somebody in there, they might have somebody from the city or the state that they're working on that procedure with. You can't just have them standing in line. They're not going to stand in line. And you mentioned a few minutes ago about people not playing well with others. That's generally why they end up in there in the first place, for the most part.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have to keep them separate, and you can't turn your back on somebody while you're filling out paperwork. So it's very important to understand what those holding cells are used for. And this misinformation that keeps getting out there, as the chief outlined, there's constitutional case law that bases it on that, and if you violate that, if you go over that, it becomes litigating factors that can cost you.
Are these for the question about constitutionality and things like that? Are these for offenders who have already been adjudicated by the judge, or is this before the process? They haven't been given their sentencing yet?
As any inmate in custody, the sheriff is obligated by statute to provide adequate shelter, housing, medical care, food, and safety. There's a case that was out of California here in 2007. I'll read you real quick what the judge said. It says a federal judge ruled that the jail officials violated prisoners' constitutional rights when they had them sleep on concrete floors because of chronic overcrowding. The U.S. District Judge Gene D. Pregerson said jail officials were guilty of quote-unquote deliberate indifference when they failed to provide inmates with bunks. Quite simply, that a custom of leaving inmates nowhere to sleep but the floor constitutes cruel and unusual punishment and is nothing short of self-evident. And that was a 2007 case down in Los Angeles, California, which is also the Ninth Circuit, which is the same circuit that we are in. Yeah.
We just sat last week or week before again with members of our county commission that want to consider using that floor space as a place to house people, and clearly the case law says you're not to be doing that.
Is there a way that you could do something to the floor to make it not concrete, and then it would be a little better? There's
no place to add. I'll let Chief explain it because he's the expert in this area. But you have so much space inside the structure, and you have to have so much space for people to sleep and so much space for people to move about in there. They have to have some movement space too. So you can't take up the floor space where people walk through and put beds right in the middle of it. Otherwise, there's not the square footage area that's required of you to have for movement of people in the jail. I'll let Kevin explain that.
Yeah. Realistically, I mean, what the Constitution says is that the sheriff has to provide basic human needs, and that's shelter, food, exercise, clothing, sanitation, and hygiene. Mm-hmm. So if you take 10 people and you put them in a 1,200 square foot house with 1 bathroom and 2 bedrooms, what's the likelihood of you being able to provide those type of living conditions?
Yeah.
It's overcrowded. You physically can't do it.
In the cells, how does the layout work in a cell? Are there 2 bunks per, 4 bunks per?
Yeah, there's 2 bunks. Well, most of the cells have 2 bunks. There are some cells that only have 1, and those are for the high risk people or the people who are on disciplinary lockdown. And then there's a toilet and a sink in the room.
Is there any opportunity to add a 3rd into each of those, or is that again because there's not enough room for folks?
Jeff, if you go back to when that jail was built, it was built for 46 people.
Okay, so it's already maxed.
They went back and they somehow got permission to double that, and they added those secondary bunks. Those are supposed to be, one room, 1 bunk, and now there's 2. You can't go above that. And there's a number of studies that we've had done on the jail. Like the King report. I can't remember all of them. I get a stack of studies that have been done on that jail over the years. That every one of those recommendations come back and say that jail's full, and it's been going on since 1986 saying that. So you can't add more space to the jail.
I know.
Add more bunks. I'm sorry.
A couple weeks ago, you guys were in, and you said that you're doing tours now for folks.
Yes.
How is that process working? Are people coming in and taking advantage of this and looking for themselves? How many beds
I would hope that more people come in. Chief has actually given a couple tours on that, and we're hoping that you're going to come down and we're going to let you count the number of beds and see if you can make it to 94. We welcome, the Chief does a brief background, and we don't have masses of people coming through at once, but to walk through that and see what is inside there and what we're talking about, I think would really help the general public understand.
It's Tuesday at 10. Those tours are this every week.
Tuesdays at 10. Put that on my calendar. Very nice. Okay. Anything else that you would like to make sure the community knows about this situation? There's folks, and you probably can't comment on this, but there will be people out there that say they're criminals. Who cares? Let them sleep on the floor.
Again, the Constitution is what we're mandated, that we raise our right hand to uphold the laws of the state of Washington and this country and the Constitution. And all of us that run jails, sheriffs and some agencies, city agencies, police chiefs that have jails, we're all required to follow that same constitutional law. And when it's not followed, it results in some pretty hefty penalties against the entities that aren't following those. They're huge. Lawsuits are settled on that issue.
And plus, we're talking about lives of people, and the sheriff is obligated, like I said, to make sure that those people are just as good when they leave jail as when they were when they came in, if not better. Mm-hmm. And it's about protecting people. It's about doing the right thing for the right reason. It's about treating inmates with dignity and respect, and that's just all part of it.
Kevin, Casey, it's always good talking with you about these issues. And tomorrow, Tuesday, 10 o'clock. Where do they go? Just to the
main jail lobby door.
Jail lobby doors
on 4th Street.
Bring your ID. They'll check you in and then go for a tour. Count the beds.
Yep.
See you there.
See
Thanks.
You there.
And thanks.